For this week, we're going to talk about public graphic design. What exactly is public graphics? And these are just any form of visual communication that's designed for display in public spaces. We were talking at the first week about billboards and how they have to capture your attention, just like that when you're driving down the highway. They're meant to inform, they're meant to guide, advertise, or engage whatever audience they're appealing to in open environments. And this could be streets, transportation hubs like subways or bus stops, commercial districts, public buildings. They can take many forms, and the ones that we're going to be looking at, we're going to have advertising and promotional graphics. This is the billboards that we just mentioned again, the posters, which we talked about last week, and the digital displays, and these are going to promote products, services, events, etc. The wayfinding, which we've been dancing around this with Vignelli and the subway, and these are the directional signs, the maps, the symbols that help everyone navigate through the spaces, airports, subways, city streets, hospitals, wherever you need to get from point A to point B. And we also are going to look at street art and murals. This is the graffiti, commissioned murals, installations that are going to convey some sort of cultural, political, or some sort of aesthetic messages. And they can also, be public awareness and activism graphics. These are our protest posters, the campaign materials. We looked at the Obama Hope poster last week. This would be that area. And, of course, visual storytelling, which we chat about a lot in class, because this is used to advocate for social or political causes. And last but not least, this is our digital and interactive displays. This is the AR, the LED screens, digital signage, something that can be changed pretty swiftly because of the tech and its interactivity. And again, this could be those interactive exhibits like that Van Gogh immersive that we saw a couple years ago, and how do you engage with viewers in new ways? And that's a great one to look at for that. And, this is what's shaping our interaction with the world. It's influencing our movement. It's telling us how to, direct ourselves, like we said, from point A to point B. It's our communication. It's our cultural expression. And public graphics is going to merge all of these together. The graphic design, the urban planning, advertising, the social commentary. And this is going to play a role in both commercial and as well non-commercial spaces. So let's just see where the beginnings of this was. So we're going to take a look at the early billboards, hand-painted signs, and outdoor advertising. And super early on this, just so we sort of see how long ago this can date back. This is an early example of a public advertising from ancient Rome. We're going to see political slogans, commercial advertisements. These are oftentimes called electoral graffiti. And these were all painted on city walls, just like they are today. The inscriptions are going to cover a broad range of topics. It can be poems, advertisement, political statements, greetings. And in our slide deck, you're going to see that link for the source and more info. What's really interesting with that, it's an archaeological dig site that shows, different graffitis, what they're saying, etc., and it's archiving them. And it's really interesting to look through. From there, we're going to move to our hand-printed signs and our shop advertisements. We're going to jump up in the timeline just a little bit, and this is before the printing press. So how do you advertise your goods? Well, we're going to use hand-painted signs. In medieval Europe, the shop owners are going to hang wooden or iron symbols outside their stores because, most people this time couldn't read. So if you needed to go to the cobbler, how do you know which of those stores is the cobbler? Well, you look for the sign that's in the shape of a boot in this case. It had bread on it. Chances are it's a bakery. So it's sort of an early form of branding, again, in its earliest form. And what this is all evolving into is what we consider the billboards in the 19th and 20th century. This is industrialization. We're getting that mass production. We're getting a larger middle class. Businesses are going to want to reach more customers, and in turn, large-scale advertising is going to take off. And we're going to see the first version of billboards appear in the 1800s. They're often going to be hand-painted. They're going to be on buildings. They're going to be painted literally on the buildings, or near transportation hubs where people will be congregating. One of the ones to look at for this is Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. They are great to look at for this because, it's the urban areas are expanding. How do you catch new attention to the public? And these large hand-painted posters, they're going to be really popular for promoting events and products. And Jared Bell in 1835 was working with these, and he was advertising circus performances. And these posters were strategically placed in high traffic areas, and in turn, it's going to attract audience because, you're walking down the street, you're going to see this sign, in this case of the elephant, and you're going to say, oh, wow, there's 5 herds of performing elephants and 5 circus rings at one time on Friday. I'm going to have to go. So it's really a great form of advertising to the public to get you into whatever event it is you're hosting. And just to take some looks at some others of this style, Barnum, the Barnum part of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, was one of the people who are actually going to be revolutionizing advertising in the late 1800s, in particular with these large-scale posters that's promoting his circus. He's placing these advertisements along train routes, and he's also getting them in the towns before his shows actually arrive. So it's going to create a little bit of buzz for what's coming to town. And this method of building hype is still prevalent today. And we're going to see that in movie posters and event billboards. And then just some more of these so you can get an idea. There's a sort of, formulaic approach to this, but again, this is early, what we're going to look at next week, branding. So you want to be able to attach that name to a certain look and aesthetic, This looked very similar to the first one with the elephants. And then what this is evolving into is our roadside advertising. Before this, we were hitting train stations and transportation hubs. But now we're starting to get into the automobile travel. So in the 20s and 30s, the advertisers are recognizing that this is a great opportunity to reach motorists, as well as what we saw with, the more, I'll say, pedestrian to public transportation traffic. Billboards, they were erected along highways. They were really bright. They were really bold. They had concise messages because, again, we need to be able to read these going by at high speeds. And you only have, 1 to 3 seconds to catch the people's attention and get your message across. It's a really interesting form of advertising. And what's interesting with this era is this is how we're figuring out how all of this works. It's the standardization of the sizes of the billboards themselves. We're starting to see national advertising campaigns, and this is going to funnel into what we talk about next week with branding. Coca-Cola starts looking like Coca-Cola. Pepsi starts looking like Pepsi. Michelin tires, starts looking like their brand. This is the roots of this. And then just so we can see some examples of these signs. And again, the early days, anything goes. We don't quite have a system in place, so everyone's sort of jockeying up to the front line to get their name out there. So there's a lot of visual bombardment with this because, you want to advertise your goods. So there's a lot of advertising. One of the ones to look at that was really effective, especially from the motorist perspective, is the Burma Shave signs. And these were sequential roadside rhymes. And there's lots of sites that have archived this. You'll be able to, read up on what all they were promoting in the style of the jingles, because we would think of them as a jingle or a slogan nowadays. We haven't seen jingles before, so this is where this started. And this is promoting their Burma Shave product, and they were little red signs with white lettering, and they would have funny rhymes or sayings spread across multiple signs, and each one's going to be placed a short distance apart so that when you were driving, they would sort of pop up. So this is one that's, we can see it all together as one, but when you're driving, you would read the lines one by one as you pass by, and at the end, it would culminate in seeing the brand name. And this campaign style was really popular from the 20s to the 60s, and it set the stage for really quick, impactful advertising, that we are still seeing today. Just to take a look at those hand-painted signs we were chatting about, the ones that were put on the sides of buildings. And what's interesting with this is, it's helping to add to that visual identity of the urban landscapes. And one of the things I found really interesting, of course, when trying to find examples for this chat is, this is an ephemeral period. It was, the pieces were up and then they vanished. So it's almost like a visual archaeological dig of the advertisements. So in this case, one billboard was taken down just to reveal, 3 hand-painted ones behind it. So now you have a sort of historic marker of what was happening at that time when these signs were painted. Coca-Cola in the mid 20th century is going to use these billboards to get, really vibrant, detailed artwork. And it's the people smiling, drink Coke, everyone's happy, have a soda. But that's that branding and where it's sort of going to be stemming from for this company. And again, easily recognizable. I mean, we can see the logo then looks like the logo now. So we see that foundation. And again, painted on the side of the building. And what's interesting with this, it becomes a sort of, we're viewing this as an advertisement, but because it's hand painted, it's on the building, it's almost entwining itself into an art form. It's going to shape the identity of whatever city that it's in. And just some more glimpses at this. These billboards had a sort of pop out style. And again, you're driving down the highway, and if it's popping out like this, it's going to catch your attention a little bit more than if it just stayed within that rectilinear grid. All right, so the billboards, these developments, they're not just, reflecting the changes in the marketing strategies, but they're also starting to blend tech, transportation, and consumer culture throughout these 19th and 20th centuries. And, lights, neons, spotlights, which we can see here in this photo. There's our drink Coke again. Everything's lit up, so it's going to catch your attention. Again, blending tech. And this is going to be something we see repeated throughout the years, even to right today. In the 60s, we're going to see silk screen printing and lithography come into play again. This is going to allow billboards to be mass produced. So sort of like how we were saying, once upon a time, when books were made in the monasteries by the monks, hand painted and illustrated one by one, and then Gutenberg in the press, all of a sudden we had mass production of that. You could have multiple books. So it's sort of the same thing of what's happening with billboards in this era. We just saw the one drink Coca-Cola painted on the sides of the buildings. Well, that was the only one, and it only existed there. I mean, you could replicate it, but you're going by hand, and one person is creating all of this. And now we're going to be able to have the same design repeated hundreds, thousands of times, and it's going to make an even more consistent and cohesive voice and message for the advertiser. So again, we're having this mass production, and it does slowly, of course, start to replace the hand-painted signs. And I always like to show this one because, we think about the larger companies like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Michelin, Levi's, etc. But it's also happening on a smaller scale. And this one's someone's archive of just going through the town and finding their old signs, hand-painted, etc. And this was the early litho style, so that you could get your advertisement for your business out in your actual town. So yeah, we're working at a large scale, but we're also working at it in a local level. Another one with the pop-outs that were popular this time was the Marlboro and the Marlboro Man slogan/ad campaign for this. The billboards and advertisements had a similar style. And again, it's sort of popping out so it can catch our attention while we're driving down that highway. Levi's is a big one to look at for all of this too, just for advertising and marketing and branding in general, because they have been, pretty consistent with this since the literal gold rush when they started advertising with that red tag. That's still popular today. But, we get this, silkscreen litho style billboard. It's capturing the essence of that time, and then, just a little bit of evolution through time, so you can see how their billboards, their marketing, their signage continues to have that consistency to it. And then I found this one interesting to show for this because, like we were saying, some of this is so ephemeral that, it doesn't exist anymore. So we might unearth it behind another sign, but a lot of these are going to be documented through documentary photography. And this is during like the WPA public works, World War II era, where you're documenting the towns and what's happening. And we can see on the far bottom left of that screen the Coca-Cola and the Pepsi sign. So even in really rural areas, the same marketing, branding, and advertisement was being spread. And then that, just again, from the Pepsi point of view, so we could see from that last one to this one, we have the pop-outs, again, to make it a little bit more exciting and interesting to the viewers as they're driving down the highway. But again, that branding really consistent throughout the years. So we were talking about the merging of tech, and you're going to see this in particular with places like Times Square, Piccadilly Circus, Tokyo, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And these billboards, they're just, they're more than ads. They're turning into entertainment themselves. We get the neon, we have the lights. It's blinking, it's moving all the time, it's catching your attention, these interactive elements, and eventually the digital screens are going to transform these into visual spectacles. Times Square nowadays has the AR integration, which is really interesting. And these are just early glimpses. These are Piccadilly, just so we can see, how all the lights, the neons are working together. And again, it's interesting how, again, we're seeing Coca-Cola, and its branding is consistent throughout all these years. There it is again. We would be able to recognize this. This is Times Square. We have the neons. We have the interactions. We're selling our message. It's a little bit of visual bombardment. But again, tech and the billboard industry is starting to work together for this, and taking it up a notch is Tokyo. And we have a lot of neon sign and public graphics integration, and it's the Tokyo visual culture is really entwined with the neons, and this is going to date back to the early 20th century, because unlike the Western cities, we're seeing, we saw the Coca-Cola, we saw the Pepsi, everything's really flat, it's really straightforward. Levi's, same thing. Tokyo's approach is much more layered, chaotic, and immersive. And, we're going to see these neon signs and digital screens all over every surface. It's just, unlike Piccadilly, where it was like sort of all lined up and then they were stacked on top. This is everywhere all at once. And why? How did this start? The neon craze goes, way back. So in the 1920s, the first signs started appearing in Ginza, and this is inspired by the advertising trends from the US and also Europe. And by the 50s and 60s, when they were rebuilding after World War II, the neon light became a symbol of modernization and progress. So it wasn't just about selling the products, it's also about creating a visual identity for the city itself. And again, everything, everywhere, all in your face, creating that aesthetic. And just another glimpse of it, and this is a notable Godzilla Road. And yes, there is an actual giant Godzilla head peeking over the buildings. You'll see it sort of dead center on the left, just a little bit. And it's going to be illuminated by spotlights. And it is also, of course, surrounded by those glowing signs. We also have the robot restaurant, which I'm just going to zip back 2 slides. You can see it right here. If you can see my cursor, right here around the first third of the upper pane of this window, or of the lights, and it's now closed, but it was famous for its absolute neon overload. It has synchronized flashing lights, and it covered every inch of the building, and just so we can see a glimpse of it. The source here that's linked in our presentation notes is really interesting. It was actually a travel blogger who documented this site before it closed. So this was a really interesting glimpse of that. So be sure to check that out. All right. So from there, how do we navigate through our society? We were advertising, we had our billboards, we had our, public displays in that sense. But what happens if you need to go from point A to point B? So public graphics aren't just about the advertising. It's how do we navigate the world? And just think about the last time you visited an airport or a subway or a hospital. How did you know where to go from point A to point B? And these wayfinding systems and standardized signage is going to make public spaces way more accessible and user-friendly. And we already saw some of this with, like we said, Vignelli. So, we have a little bit of groundwork for this already. And wayfinding, if we just want to think about it this way, is the process of navigating and orienting oneself in a physical or digital space using visual, auditory, or tactile cues. It involves the design of signage, the symbols, the maps, the pamphlets, the posters, the kiosks, whatever environmental graphics you're going to need in that project to help people understand and move through whatever complex environment you're designing for efficiently. Think about this as the UI UX or typography. We want that invisible crystal goblet. We want your experience to be intuitive, and we want the user experience to be solid and without any incidents. So this is a really good area to study if you're interested in all of this, because the effective wayfinding actually considers the human behavior, the cognitive mapping, accessibility, the user experience to ensure the clarity and ease of navigation for diverse audiences. So what types are we looking at? The identification signs. This is the name or the function of the place. So room name plaques, restroom signs, street sign names. Regulatory. This is the rules or restrictions communications, the no smoking, the traffic signs. Directional signs, they're going to guide us to a location. For example, you have the airport arrow pointing someone to the baggage claim. You have the museum floor plan, and maybe we're going to pick on Van Gogh again, a Van Gogh exhibit, and then you just follow the arrow or arrows so that you get to that exhibition space. Informational signs, this is the essential details about a place. So the exit signs, the parking lot instructions, the hospital directories. Example, if you're on campus at one of our parking garages, you're going to see that take your ticket before you leave. You have to pay before you leave. Make sure you have your ticket with you. And then when you're at the ticket pay kiosk, all of those steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many, are there for you to walk your way through. So that's the informational signs. And, two things we're going to look at is AIGA, and we're also going to look at the Olympic pictograms. And if we think about it, the restroom signs, the airport symbols, exit signs, they almost look the same everywhere. Organizations like AIGA and ISO developed the standardized symbols to eliminate language barriers so that no matter where you are, there was a sort of universal understanding of that symbol. And one of the best examples is the Olympic pictograms, and it's first introduced in Tokyo in 1964. And these were simple visual icons. They're going to allow international visitors to navigate events without needing to know the local language. And it was so successful that pictograms have become the norm in public signage. And just so that we can get a look at this, you're bringing everyone from all over the world in one spot. So how do you deal with that linguistic barrier? Icons. So these simple visual icons, they're going to allow those international visitors to navigate events without needing to know the local language. And this was so successful, again, it has become the norm. So if I wanted to go to the sailing or rowing events, then I know exactly where to navigate to when I would have been at this Olympics. The London Underground Map. This was designed by Harry Beck, 1931. And this is, you can see that Vignelli paid homage to this. And instead of having a geographically accurate map, Beck instead created a scheme diagram with clear color-coded lines, simplified navigation, and made it easier to use for the commuters. And the influence, this inspired transit maps worldwide. And, we talked about it via New York and also the Tokyo Metro. Universal pictograms at airports. Why does this matter? Airports, again, we have this hub of people coming in potentially internationally, and then you have to go from point A to point B. And if you don't speak the language, then you need to know how to go, let's say you're going to look for the phone, and then you have to go to the baggage claim. And you don't want to rely on language. So organizations like AIGA, that's the American Institute of Graphic Arts, and the ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, have helped to create globally recognized symbols seen here. And again, that source that I have linked here in our notes, be sure to check on it. The whole case study for this AIGA project is there. The big one also is hospitals and healthcare, because, they're complicated buildings. They could be confusing to navigate. And if you're already stressed, it might lead to more stress and also missed appointments. So, hospitals want to implement color-coded zones, numbered pathways, and interactive kiosks to improve visitor experience. And one to look at would be the Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic's wayfinding systems designed with real people in mind, and it makes it easier for patients and visitors to find their way. And again, especially because chances are the people are going to be stressed. This is a stressful moment, and you might have a little bit of panic and, where do I want to go? And so you need this to be super intuitive so that they can get from point A to point B. And their approach just isn't about directions. Let's reduce that anxiety, and let's make the healthcare navigation much more accessible. So it's a model that other hospitals can learn from and also improve the overall patient experience. And they're doing this by digital navigation and interactive maps. They have color-coded zones and landmark-based nav. They have multilingual and accessibility-focused signage, and they also have personal assistants and on-site wayfinding staff. Another good one to look at is Disney, and the link here is actually someone who has an archive of signage on Instagram for Disney and Disneyland parks in general. Disney theme parks are going to use visual landmarks, really clear signage, and even scent cues, which is a really interesting aspect of marketing. And it's going to help guide guests without overwhelming them. So where is this all heading? We're going to see it with digital wayfinding. This is the interactive screens, the mobile apps, the AR nav through airports, malls, hospitals, etc. We're also looking at this from a sustainable design point of view, eco-friendly materials, solar-powered signage, and adaptive LED signs. And you're also going to see this with smart cities. This is the integration with AI and IoT. This is the Internet of Things to provide real-time location guidance. It's more than signs. It's how we experience and interact the world. It's how we get from point A to point B. It's ensuring that accessibility, efficiency, and a seamless user journey. All right, from that, we're going to look at public graphics as our social commentary. And public spaces, they aren't just for advertising. They're not just for wayfinding. These are places where you can express your voice, challenge authority, and also share your stories. And throughout history, artists and designers have used graffiti, murals, street art to call attention to these social and political issues, to reclaim the public space, and also to connect with the communities. And these works aren't confined to galleries or museums. They are on our city walls, our subways, our sidewalks, and they engage with people every day in real time. So, graffiti is a form of protest, and it's been around for centuries. We saw early graffiti with our Roman piece on the very first slide, but it really became a cultural movement in the 70s in New York City. And young artists, many are from marginalized communities, they're going to use spray paint to tag subway cars and buildings and turn that urban landscape into a massive public canvas. And their work just isn't about art, it's about visibility, identity, and resistance in a city that has oftentimes ignored them. So let's take a look at some of them. Basquiat, and we often see his fine art side of things, but he actually got his start from graffiti. And he had a collaborator. They painted cryptic, poetic messages across the city, and eventually he transitioned to the gallery world, where he did, of course, blend graffiti aesthetics with fine art. And this is also how you can challenge those traditional ideas. Who gets considered to be the real artist in the gallery? His rise to fame showed that graffiti wasn't just vandalism. It's a really powerful artistic force that could shape culture. And there's one of his examples. An example of him working. And again, all of these links will take you there, and you can look at more of his work. And this one in particular, I want to talk about because we're going to see this echoed in a Banksy work in a moment. And then while this is more on the air quote fine art spectrum, he's using the same graffiti style techniques that he would have used in the street, but brought it into a canvas. Say Adams, a graffiti artist in New York City who transitioned into graphic design. So we're going to see a lot of these blend together. So whether it be like Basquiat blending art with graffiti, we're going to see a lot of these also blending their graphic design with their graffiti. He became one of the founding creative directors of the Def Jam Records. He's worked with Run DMC, the Beastie Boys. He's created a lot of iconic logos and album covers, and he's infusing his street art background into his graphic design work. And just some more examples of this. What's really interesting with him is there are a lot of interviews out there with him, so I recommend you go check him out and listen to some of his theories and philosophies about graffiti blending with graphic design. This is one of his wall mural paintings. So again, graffiti-esque, but also bringing that public space interaction with painting, traditional materials. Futura, also originally known for his graffiti, but then merged into being a graphic designer and a commercial artist. He's worked with Louis Vuitton, BMW, Nike, and he's bringing his abstract graffiti style into really high-end design products, just so that you can see a sample of his graffiti work. And Shu Molman, he is known for calligraffiti, and this is a fusion of calligraphy and graffiti. And a lot of his work also sort of melds into the design world with, how his style is set. And you're going to see traditional calligraphy with that rebellious spirit of graffiti. And you're going to have pieces that have been, merging between the two. You can use it for the posters, for the billboards, for signage, etc. And these have been showcased globally as well. And how do you do all this in the digital age also? So graffiti and murals have our deep histories with the analog, but what happens when it evolves into the digital with our technology? It's just like what we were seeing with Times Square and Piccadilly with the lights and the neons. How do you get tech involved with this? So, artists today, we're going to use the stencils, we're going to use paste ups, we're going to use digital projection, and these messages are going to be able to spread worldwide in seconds, especially thanks to our friend social media. Which brings us to Banksy. And I said we'd be revisiting the Basquiat piece here again. He's using stencils and irony to critique capitalism, war, and government surveillance. He, works, and then all of a sudden it magically appears overnight in unexpected locations. And this is great for social media because you can sort of see the pop-up style with that. And so, we've probably seen the painting of the young girl letting go of a heart-shaped balloon or the rat holding a protest sign. Regardless of the material or the context or the content, his work tends to spark that conversation, and it's also going to challenge authority. And in this case, we see the echo of the Basquiat painting being integrated into his piece. Shepard Fairey, we talked about him before last week in posters with the Obama poster, but just so we can see some of his other work. He's internationally known for his Obey campaign, and we talked about the Hope poster. We won't go into that again, but we can also see how he is working with his iconic political images on buildings, mural style in this. And again, we are seeing how street art can influence the mainstream politics. And just another one of his works. And one of the things you'll hear say in one of his interviews is how, music and art and design and graffiti, all of this is working together. And so there's really no boundaries between the two. Everyone's having a conversation together. AR. And this is where tech is sort of evolving everything a little bit further. And this is going to create more interactive murals. So you can point your phone at the wall and then see some sort of shape or digital animations pop out at you through your phone. And the big one to look at is Google's Geospatial Creator. And there is a link to this case study so you can go and see all sorts of examples to this. Again, it's in our presentation notes. And again, how do you merge digital art with the real world places? So instead of just looking at that mural installation, you can use your phone to see hidden details, animation, or some sort of interactive element layered into the artwork. AIGA had one of the chapters had a really cool event in the it was around probably 2012, where they made these interactive murals throughout the town, and when you'd point your phone at it, it would give you the history of the town. So it gives you that one extra layer of information. And this is a great way to make public art and design way more immersive, and it's going to help turn our everyday spaces and experiences that are going to help you to actually explore them and interact with them. And in the notes also is a video of this, because a photo is one thing, but actually seeing a video documentation of it is really impactful. Jessica Angel, and this is part of the Vancouver Biennale. This is called Vauxhall Bridge. It's an 8,000 square foot installation under the Cambie Bridge in Vancouver. This project actually combines the analog, so this is the physical vinyl, and that's the mural aspect, with the AR. And this is going to allow viewers to interact with animations or get more into the artwork's actual digital aspects. And there's multiple overlays for this. And the same thing There's video documentation of that, so be sure to check that out in our notes. Brand XR's AR murals. And again, lots of businesses or corporations are sort of at the forefront of this, and then they're having artists interact with this and see how the technology can be used. For these, you scan your QR code near the artwork, and you can see the animations or the interactive features overlaid into the actual physical mural. And you're getting this blend between the static and dynamic, which we talk a lot about in design, of course. And then, how do you get that public engagement with the piece, which is really, important for us to connect our story to our clients and the viewers. The AR murals, these are with an app. And then again, same thing. It's like the murals that we just saw. When you look through it with the app, you're going to see that overlay, motion, sound, and we're getting more depth and narrative to the public art pieces. And again, this tech is being used in many cities worldwide, and it's going to help bring that new layer of interactivity to urban art. So public graphics, whether it be graffiti, murals, digital installations, it's not just about making the spaces look interesting. It's about communicating something. So this could be a protest message, a way to guide people through the city, or an interactive experience to get you to stop and engage with it. From the graffiti subway cars in the 90s to today's AR murals, digital signage, public design, all of this has always been about capturing the attention of the viewer and shaping how we experience the world around us. So, like we were saying with Piccadilly and the Times Square, our technology is always going to be changing. But that's also going to be, how designers evolve also. It's going to help us approach public spaces in new ways. So these interactive displays, the motion graphics, the real-time data that's becoming part of that mix, creating the work that, it's not just meant to be looked at, it's meant to be experienced and also responded to. So public design is always evolving, but that is the core of it. It's about the same thing. It's making you stop, think, and connect with whatever is happening around you in the world today.